Hello and welcome to Making Worlds, conversations about imagining otherwise. I'm Hannah McGregor, and you might know me from other podcasts such as Witch Please, a now defunct series about the Harry Potter books, or Material Girls, a pop culture podcast about using critical theory to understand the zeitgeist. I am an author and a professor by day, and by night, I wear horns and study thanergetic energies and talk to the dead. For this episode, I have an extremely exciting guest. I have invited scholar and Reverend daughter of Drearborough, Megan Goodwin, to talk about the Locked Tomb series. Now, for those of you who don't know what this is, the Locked Tomb books are a tetralogy, a series of 4, only 3 out so far, but 1 to come, by New Zealand author Tamsyn Muir. That could be best described as being about lesbian necromancers in space, but we'll get more into that once I've introduced Megan. Megan Goodwin is the founder and co-director of the Bardo Institute for Religion and Public Policy and the media and tech consultant for the Crossroads Project. With Elise Morgenstein first, she co-hosts the podcast Keeping It 101, A Killjoy's Introduction to Religion, and their first co-authored book, Religion Is Not Done With You, truly such an ominous title, is forthcoming from Beacon in fall 2024. So, with no further ado, let's say hello to Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hi, hello. Uh, as this is a video medium, I'm going to go ahead and share with your viewers what I've already shared with you, which is that I have dressed for the occasion. Welcome to my skeletal tits. Hooray.
Yeah. I really love this. I also dressed for the occasion, but
Yeah, but
I don't
down. It's really subtle.
I don't understand why this felt right to me, but it did, and
No,
I'm just
100%.
I'm just leaning into it, right? You could picture me sort of just showing up.
Just like low-key Lichter wear. I love it. Absolutely.
Low-key Lichter wear, that's exactly the vibe. Okay, let us take a step back for the uninitiated amongst our current viewers slash watchers, and let's talk about the Locked Tomb series. Now, usually, Megan, I start by asking my guests why they pitched the book that they did, but I actually reached out to you and told you this was what we were talking about.
And I was delighted.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about this series and a little bit, spoiler light, and maybe a little bit about what you love about
Oh golly. Okay. How much time do we have? I can do this. So the first
it?
book is this hilarious, very snarky lesbian sword unwilling nun who gets conscripted into going with her worst enemy into space to perhaps ascend to something better. And they wind up in kind of a big locked room murder mystery situation where they're both trying to figure out who's doing the murders and unlock mysteries of the universe in this big world that we're only getting a very small piece of. We get this phenomenally hot enemies to friends to maybe smooching buddies, unclear, and then
Certainly holding one another tenderly in a swimming pool, buddies.
it's so tender. It's so I'm undone without you. Anyway, it's fine. I feel really normal and very hinged about this series. So, deeply tender moments,
Yeah.
snarky, sword wielding gingers, which obviously deeply important to me. There's a big battle at the end of the first one. Tragedy has struck, but we don't totally know what's going on. And then we go to the second book, which completely shifts tone in a way that the level of gonads on Taz to take you from smart, snarky talking, ginger sword, butchy lesbian to now we're gonna do
Yeah.
that's Gideon.
Gideon in Gideon the
Yes.
Ninth. And then we
To
move
Harrow,
to Harrow the
where
Ninth.
most of the narrative is in second person, which usually pisses me off, but really works here.
Oh man, does she ever pull it
It's
off?
just the artistry of this is phenomenal. And it's this deep and really compelling, but also very disorienting meditation on grief, while you're also introduced to a completely new cast of characters who have possibly magical, possibly scientific powers.
And you also return to the events of the
Mhm.
first book and everything
Mhm.
happens
Mhm.
differently.
Everything happens differently. So you get all of these alternate universes, and also they're just like low key chilling with God. So
Yeah.
we get through this meditation on grief. The narrative shifts like 800 million degrees again, and then we're dumped into Nona, where we're familiar with the body of the
Yeah. No,
Nona
Nona
the
the
Ninth.
Ninth, which is the third book in
Correct.
the series.
Where we're familiar with the body of the protagonist, but we don't know who's in that body or what's happening. We know some of the characters who have showed up, but we don't really know what's going on with them. We also get a bigger sense of how the universe got to where it is. We start getting this big narrative around, honestly, climate crisis and trillionaires having killed the world, and how God intervenes. God slash John, who we find out is a native New Zealander, um, intervenes to not stop that destruction, but I guess reboot once everything goes wrong. And we also get a sense of like not everybody being super big fans of God, which we knew already, but more of the like sustained resistance and attempts to take God down or possibly murder him. God and Gideon from the first book also have a special relationship. It's so queer, and it's so weird, and it's so religious but not in traditional ways, and I'm just fully obsessed with it and delighted to be talking about it with you.
Man, there are so many things about it that I want to spend a million hours talking about, but maybe let's start with the queerness because this is a series that is in the first episode of Making Worlds, I had Hope Rehack on and we talked about the queer aesthetics of Our Flag Means Death. And we started to articulate something very specifically about queer aesthetics, not gay aesthetics, not lesbian aesthetics, but queer aesthetics, which has something um that has something to do with the way in which intimacy and friendship operate, the permeability between friendship and romance, the sort of many forms of emotional intimacy that are present and legitimized and taken seriously, um, the many ways in which we are presented with like legitimate ways to be in the world. Like all of these things feel deeply queer at a like a molecular level.
Well, and I think I want to even like take it up a little bit of a notch, because I think in both Flag Means Death and in this Nonaverse, it's there's a utopic element to it, where it's not just that the queerness is so omnipresent, and it's not just that it's celebrated, it's so normalized as to be unremarkable, right? Like, I don't think, and actually my friend Lissa Harris, who did the sword consulting for the book, I think said this in one of her interviews, that Gideon would be shocked to find out about homophobia. Like, the fuck? Where would that even come from? What would that even look like? So everyone is just so fluidly sexual in beautiful and unexpected ways. And also the gender positions are so fluid and, again, unremarkable. The fact that you've got uh characters who we should assume were assigned female at birth being referred to as tower princes just gets battered around and nobody talks about it. There are several characters, particularly in the third book, who are just they thems, and people are militant about using the right pronouns, but it's just like, oh, I didn't know, and let's keep trucking. So it's honestly odd to be in a world that is into be in a universe in a galaxy that is falling apart to the extent that this one is, but somehow they seem to have fixed like sexuality and gender. Cool beans. And also God got rid of the internet. So like truly he did build a paradise.
I mean, he kind of built a paradise, but another one of the things that is so fascinating about this series is the way that Muir moves us like so unabashedly from unreliable narrator to unreliable narrator to unreliable narrator. Like she loves to put us inside, deep inside the perspective of a in some way totally fucking crazy woman.
Or just broken, right? Like fractured.
To the degree that the series feels like a celebration of the very particular way in which broken women see the world,
Very much
and
so. Oh, I love that.
and a like a refusal to ever like take that step back and give us anything like an omniscient perspective. It's like we're always inside somebody's head, and you know, one of the neat things about the move from Gideon to Harrow to Nona is the way that we're moving in proximity to power. So like, you know, Gideon is a, like you said, an unwilling nun of an, you know, ancient religion,
Slash orphan who just got dumped on this planet and is one of like 3 surviving children on it, right?
stuck on the like very fringes of this empire. um and her fantasy is a movement closer to proximity to power
An
via
empire. Yeah.
yeah, she wants to join the military. She wants to be part of the empire's military because that is what, you know, is available to her imaginatively as a form of escape. And then Harrow's story is like inside the center of power. Like we are holding hands with God. And then Nona's story takes us outside the center of empire and makes us actually look at the violence of empire from the outside, the violence of imperialism.
Very much so. And the ways that the empire has derived its own power from extracting power from other places, forces,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Um and all of that is tied up with this like deep fascination with both necromancy, so like lots of interest in thinking about magic, which is a kind of a genre that I find deeply pleasurable,
You don't
like
say.
specific thinking about how magic operates. Mm, I love it. Why do I love it? Why do I love it so
I love
much,
a
Megan?
magic procedural. Like, get me in there. Show me a system
Why
that works. Like,
why is it so satisfying for magic to be rendered like systematic?
honestly, to me, that might have something to do with the overlap of like a queer aesthetic in these books, where magic makes sense in queer spaces in a way that I don't know that it does in other ways. I have
Mm.
no sources, just vibes, but that seems correct. Like, if you were going to be in a queer world, not only would magic exist, but magic would make very much sense. There would be a system involved in a way that, like, you never get that shit in Harry Potter. I still think about, I forget if it was you or Marcel who was talking about the fact that, like, magic only kind of works in the Harry Potter universe.
It's not thought through, but you're right. There is something deeply queer about saying, like, no, magic's real. So let's think about how it actually operates.
And, like, it's a thing that you can study and understand and execute in really clear and consistent ways, which again, as a rabid consumer of all things magical and fantasy, that is a really satisfying moment. That feels like a queer woman has thought this through, and I feel held, I feel taken care of by a magical system that makes sense.
And speaking of things a queer woman has thought through, not only is this series deeply engaged with the practicalities of magic, it's also fascinated by swords.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep. It might be the gayest thing I've ever encountered, and that just delights me on so many levels.
now, why is that so? I mean, yeah, obviously, a hot redhead with a sword is the gayest thing.
Best of all possible worlds. Can you be butchy? Can you have giant arms? Yes, please and thank you. Again, I feel very held and very seen by this whole magical universe. Well, and it was funny to me too because I myself am an admirer of sword lesbians, but most of my martial arts stuff has not been weapons oriented. I only heard about this series because, and I mentioned this, my friend Lissa did the sword consulting for it, and she kept saying, "Lesbian sword nuns, you need to check this out." I was like, okay. And then by accident, I discovered the phenomenon that is the locked tomb.
My God, and what a phenomenon it is. Okay, I think we are champing at the bit to get into the ways in which this series allows us to imagine the world otherwise. So let's do that.
Where do I start? Where do you want to start? Where does this make you imagine the world otherwise, or worlds multiple?
So, the thing that I have been thinking about a lot lately, I've started to like pick away at like a book kind of based on this series, like this video series, like using this as a starting point, like a series of essays about different like properties that have like taught me pretty important things. And so I was like, why do I fucking love these books so much? And I was like, yes, the queerness. Yes, the deep fundamental queerness, and also the fascination with death and with grief and with looking those things right in the eye. And part of it for me is like what it meant to be a young person who, you know, had a parent who was dying, who grew up, you know, in proximity to death and went through like an intense goth phase.
I mean, again, whomst among us?
Yeah, yeah, but like actually a bunch of people, I guess. But like what do you suppose is the overlap of people obsessed with this series and people who went through an intense goth phase?
I mean, I think you add the other layer for me at least, which is folks who went to Catholic school. But yes, very much so. I think that that is a circle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a perfect circle. So part of it is that is like the the deep fascination with necromancy, with thinking about death, with thinking about the body, with thinking about ways in which we tear bodies apart and put them back together, with thinking about the way that that is both violent and remarkable, and that like remaking your body in the image of something else is neither without its harms nor vilified, right? In a way that again feels very queer, to be like we can remake ourselves, we can transform our bodies. That is powerful queer magic. And also, when we render life itself a resource to be extracted and used, what kinds of violence does that then seed?
Right. Well, so and that was a little bit where I was thinking, because for me it's not just, I mean, all yes to everything that you said about the intimacy with death and the materiality of death in these series. But also I think if I was going to pick like one overarching theme that I'm kind of obsessed with in this series, it's really kind of like the costs and the price of survival, right? Because the intimacy with death, the materiality with death, the fact that we've got a magical system that works with death means that survival is possible in all of these ways that, like, frankly, I don't think I've ever seen in another series. Like, there's so many different ways that this manifests, up to and including the survival of the planet Earth itself, herself, right? But also, Taz really just makes you sit with, like, this comes at a huge cost and not everybody survives even if they're still technically alive, right? What is it to be like haunting your own body post an unimaginable loss,
Mm.
right? What is it to know that your existence cost the death of thousands? And what kind of responsibilities does that dump on you that you never signed up for? What is it to be in a universe where God can and can't die multiple times? And what happens when you can't kill God and God's getting it wrong?
What do you do when you get to the center of power and you realize that that power is neither perfectly good nor perfectly evil, but just as complicated and messy as any other human you've ever encountered?
Messy, but again, like, inescapable,
Yeah.
incontrovertible.
Yeah.
I really, I mean, there are just so many moments in this book where you're like, okay, this is going to be sorted and things are going to be better now. Which, as someone who has been sitting in a deep pool, a saltwater pool of grief for at least the last year, I absolutely get the longing for that. Like, okay, this is the moment and it sucked, but we're gonna get past it. And it just keeps being complicated and bigger every time we zoom out. And so I'm both finding myself really excited for the final book, Elect of the Ninth, but like also, oh no, like what's what what horrors are we going to be visited upon, like, are going to be visited upon us now? What other horrible ways am I going to have to think about, again, like survival in human existence?
Again, I want to keep the spoiler light, but it is as you said, it turns out in book 3 we find out that it is also like an apocalyptic dystopian climate crisis series, which there have been lots of hints of throughout.
There have, and at the same time, like I read Nona at least thrice. I just finished re-listening to the audiobook, and there's so many hints that if you don't, you just have to be watching it every single moment, or you just, I at least I do, I just miss things
Yeah.
that in retrospect feel like they've been telegraphed.
These books are dense.
They really are. And so like she's so smart
So
and
smart.
so thoughtful and so well read. Like the last time I read Nona, I kept going through and thinking like, wait, I know these names. And then I was reading Circe, and half of the names are just like jokes from the Odyssey. Like, come on, man. That's just,
Electo is she was a harpy, right?
I
Yeah.
know that now. So yeah, it's just very, very clever and also very, very devastating. And
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Can we talk about the Catholicism of it all? Because this is a piece like when you and I first started DMing on Twitter, I immediately was like, oh, there's whole layers to what's going on here that I am missing because I am not a religious studies scholar. So can you talk a little bit about, like, I feel like this book series vibes with the whole claim that religion is not done with you.
I very much believe it does. Yes. Well, and it's interesting too because the original, I caught one of the circulating rough drafts before Nona came out, and so like Taz made changes between the draft and the final because she originally had made reference to Bible verses that don't exist. So she was kind of playing fast and loose, and then got more honed down. But like, all right, without getting into the super weeds, and with the disclaimer that I am not a biblical studies scholar, the book of John in the Christian New Testament is unique among the Gospels because it tells a story that the other three don't tell. And it is written by communities that followed, but by Jesus's beloved apostle. So there's an intimacy, there is like a bodily tenderness in this account that you don't get in the other Gospels. And I think that maps on directly to the way that the series introduces us and puts us in relationship with, somebody called him Jod on on the onlines the other day, and I can't unsee it now.
It's important that people who haven't read the series yet know that when Tamsyn Muir is picturing the character of God slash John, she's picturing him as Taika Waititi. So you must also do that.
I mean, and like for me specifically, it's Taika Waititi in Our Flag Means Death because whew, feeling reverent question mark about that whole aesthetic. Again, it's not just the god figure, and we don't even get God right away. What we get are nuns, necrotic nuns, many of whom have continued in their devotions after death. We've got skeletons who show up for vespers, which cracked me up, having done similar services my own self. The thing is though is that the for all that there are tons of jokes in and around the religious piece, the series and the author take the religious piece and the devotional piece so seriously. It resonates in like a medieval mysticism way for me, where this is a series that both loves and wrestles with God relentlessly. There's a longing and a desire, and also such an anger, such a rage for the way that the divine has manifested itself and continues to fuck with us. But like, so people pick on Harrow for her makeup and for being so serious, but the series never makes fun of her for that. Even the characters that are angriest with God are angriest with God because they love him and expected better. And man, if that is not a 21st century Catholic perspective on religion, I don't know what is. So
I keep thinking I read an interview with Muir where she was talking about how it was really important to her that Harrow be a character to whom power did not come easily. Gideon is sort of our swashbuckler, and Harrow is her companion necromancer. And they are very sort of, yin and yang, this like larger than life, sword wielding redhead with huge biceps and a filthy sense of humor, and this tiny, withered, pale, constantly bleeding from an orifice. Um, like book-bound little necromantic teen who like has accrued the power that she has through, again, like a kind of monastic commitment to study and labor. The sense of like one does not one does not gain proximity to the divine. One does not, satisfy the role that we are told we were put on the earth for without this kind of constant commitment.
Oh yeah, because faith without works is dead, baby. This is so fucking Catholic. But a thing again that I love is that the vision for the Catholicism is this like Catholic worker vision, because Harrow is not in this to gain power for herself. She's in it to make sure that her house survives, that her people survive. She feels a real debt to this community and to this devotional practice that is so much bigger than herself. So again, I think it would have been really easy to make this kind of a caricature, or uh, just to have done it in a way where folks who don't care about religion, and I know that there are a lot of them, even though this makes no sense to me, but could have been really dismissive of it. And there is no way to love Harrow, and frankly, I challenge you not to love Harrow. There's no way to love Harrow without loving her devotion and loving all of that pent up frustration and self loathing, but also her like unflagging dedication to doing better if she just sorry, I'm hearing my own therapist in my head now, but if she just works hard enough, god damn it, God and everybody else is going to love her and everything's going to be okay. Which maybe it is, who knows, we don't have the last
We
book
don't
yet,
have
so
the
who
last
can
book,
say.
maybe everything will be okay.
I mean, queer stories always work out, everyone lives and it's fine. So
Yeah, does it count as burying your queers if they're all necromancers?
no, they're undead. This is, I mean, again, I think this is a part of a queer sensibility, is that the queers will not be dyed, they will not be unalived.
You can't kill what's already dead, aka queers.
Correct. We do bones, motherfucker. Also, while we're talking about queer aesthetics, like, we would be remiss not to mention a one flesh, one end moment, which is both jokes, but also has become kind of a rallying cry amongst my. I mentioned I had a really shitty 2023, and one of the amazing, beautiful things that came out of that was a rallying of an emphatically queer support network for me that I will always be grateful for, and the the kind of we're here until the wheels come off shorthand has been one flesh, one end.
For people who haven't read the books, will you tell them what one flesh, one end means?
A shell. So you mentioned that Gideon and Harrow are in this cavalier necromancer relationship, and we learned that there are 9 houses. There is a necromancer for each house. Each house necromancer gets a cavalier, and that the oath that they make to one another, which nobody fully understands until the end of the first book, is that they share one flesh and one end. Like that they are inseparable. They are committed to each other down to the bone, right? And yeah, having my queer support network be like one flesh, one end, bitch, is feels the end.
It's like, I would do truly unspeakable things for you.
So many horrific
Just
murders.
disgusting things. And that is queer kinship. All right. We do a Mad Lib at the end of every episode. And lately, we got to give a shout out to our Mad Lib consultant, Ruth Ormiston, aka Zoe's roommate, who's been helping with a lot of the Mad Lib formats. So, I'm gonna ask you. I'm not. I assume you have some familiarity with the genre, Megan.
I don't know,
So
vaguely.
I'm gonna ask you for some categories of words, and you're gonna give them to me, and then we're gonna fill them in, and then I will read to you the thing that you have created. Um, and what we're gonna start off with is that I need some numbers from you.
Well, 9,
9, great. Another one,
3. Who's Catholic?
great. One more,
7.
cool. Another one then.
44 billion.
Okay, one more.
37.
Now, could I have a character trait?
Obstreperous.
A noun.
Salt.
Okay, another noun.
Dog.
Noun character trait. Another noun that is a character trait.
Sliminess.
Could we have another number?
16.
Great. Another noun?
Corpse.
How about another number?
50,000.
Verb?
Shank.
Place?
Varoon.
And one last number, please.
73.
Great.
There's more math involved in this Mad Libs than I had expected.
Yeah, you know why? It's because of the exciting poem I'm about to read to
It's a
you.
poem.
9 is for obstreperousness, heedless of trial. 3 for the gleam of assault or a smile. 7 for sliminess, facing ahead. 44 billion for tradition and dog to the dead. 37 for the truth over corpse and lies. 16 for beauty that shanks and dies. 50,000 for salvation no matter the cost. 73 for Varoon and for all that was lost.
It's a beautiful poem.
That's beautiful. You wrote that. You wrote that beautiful poem.
I'm really proud of me.
Yeah, I'm proud of you too. Megan, if people want to learn more about your work or slide into your DMs to talk about the Locked Tomb series, where can they do that?
Well, I'm still on Twitter while she stands, and also on Blue Sky. So same handle on both. It's MPG, P as in Patricia, PhD. So MPG PhD on Twitter and .bluesky.social on Blue Sky.
Fabulous. And you've got a book coming out.
I do. Elise and I have a book coming out. It is called Religion Is Not Done With You. We're still arguing about the subtitle, so stay tuned on that. But truly, The Menace is a month. It's coming out through Beacon. It should be out in late fall 2024. So it is all about why you have to care about religion, even if you yourself are not religious. Hint, politics and calendars and race and bodies and maps.
And understanding the Locked Tomb books.
Very important. If you don't have time to do 13 years of Catholic school, this is the next best thing.
What a sales pitch.
I'm going to make stickers, I think.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Making Worlds. Making Worlds is a Witch Please production and is funded entirely by you. If you are currently watching this or listening to it, it means that you are a Patreon supporter of what we do at Witch Please Productions, and so you make this incredibly fun project possible, and for that I am eternally grateful. Thank you so much. If you want more Witch Please Productions content, you can head over to owitchplease.ca, where you can find our other shows, Material Girls and Gender Playground, as well as the entire archive of Witch Please, and transcripts and merch and reading lists and lots of other really fun, exciting stuff. You can also follow us on Instagram at Oh Witch Please, where we post reels and pictures and sometimes memes, probably, sometimes memes. And if you want even more of the stuff that we are up to at Witch Please Productions, we also have a Substack, which is at ohwitchplease.substack.com. That comes out twice a month, our monthly hoot newsletter, which has lots of fun content, including excellent crowdsourced playlists, as well as a monthly behind the episode Material Girls newsletter, where you can find out a little bit more about how we do our research process. And of course, special thanks to everybody who makes Making Worlds possible. That is our producer, Zoe Mix, our editor, Gabby Iori, our executive producer, Hannah Rehack, and of course, my deeply beloved Marcel Cosman. Pisces season has ended, but it's always Pisces season in my heart. We'll be back next month to talk about another text that lets us imagine the world otherwise. In the meantime, go ahead and subscribe to this series on YouTube if you want to find more. Follow us on social media and go read all of these lesbian necromancer and space novels. Okay, thank you. Bye.